Comics.
Because they have no home.
I am the fantastic Joe Getcho!
And I'm Mike White, and this is a special bonus episode of the Clean Comic Book Podcast. We like comics because they have no bones. Find us on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast or on Blue Sky Social or X at Boneless Comics 1. And use the hashtag Boneless Comics Podcast to join the conversation and share your thoughts.
That's right, and today's bonus boneless review is going to be about Fantastic Four! First Steps, directed by Matt Shakman, starring Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Bachrach, and Joseph Quinn, and released in 2025 by Marvel Studios.
That's right, and this will be a spoiler-filled discussion of the movie. So if you haven't yet, go see it first before you listen to our analysis, because we're not really going to be giving spoiler warnings. It's just the whole thing is going to be spoilers.
Yes, go see it.
To start us off, one of the first things that struck me about this movie being very different from any other theatrical Fantastic Four movie is that I really felt like, at least for the first hour, maybe longer, this was a science fiction movie that I was watching. It wasn't really so much about superheroes using powers to fight villains. It was about, we need to use our science to solve this problem. We need to use our teleportation technology. We need to use our FTL engine to escape a black hole and chase down this entity in space and take readings. And really the first hour, especially when they go to visit Galactus's ship, felt like a Star Trek away mission where they're like, we're in this place, we're trying to figure out what's going on. Herbie, you need to go take samples. Johnny, he's going to go interview the surfer, try and figure out what's going on with her. And then they're going to talk to Galactus and kind of negotiate. But it struck me that this is the most that they've leaned into like sci-fi aspects in any of the movies, as opposed to the one from 2005 where they were doing science things that actually are not correct. Like, what happens to rubber when it's super cooled? Well, it doesn't bend backwards. It actually cracks and breaks apart.
Yeah.
So that's wrong, Dr. Doom.
What happens when you expose liquid nitrogen to a liquid metal machine from the future? It doesn't bend. Right. It cracks and breaks into a million pieces. Hasta la vista, baby.
That's right.
We know this from Terminator. Right. Come on, Dr. Doom.
We do. That's also how they killed the alien in Alien 3, isn't it? Although they combined hot and cold, I guess, rapidly to make it explode. But I mean, I just before we get into kind of the nitty-gritty of the plot, how did you feel about where it sits as like kind of a genre movie?
But okay, so you say that it was more sci-fi and like a Star Trek episode, but isn't that what you would want for the Fantastic Four? Isn't that like the kind of vibe that makes sense for them? Because like I was watching this and I was like, regardless of any nitpicks I have or any, plot devices or CGI complaints, because, I always pick that stuff out. I was like, regardless of that, it has a feel to it that's very different from a lot of the stuff that Marvel has done recently. And it was really nice to have the Fantastic Four have their own, their own universe, basically. Like, they are the stars of the show. Everybody loves them. The whole world, knows who they are and celebrates them. Like, we've taken more than just, New York City knows the Fantastic Four, but it's like the whole world knows these people as if they're celebrities, and they don't go by their celebrity names. They go by their personal names. Like, everybody knows them. Like, this is the family. This is the superhero family. So it was really neat because it was very different than a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the past. Even The Incredibles, like that was more action oriented, whereas this was more, like you said, kind of like sci-fi exploration. But not being a long reader of Fantastic Four comics specifically, but more of just kind of like on the outside, I still thought that was a good tone shift for a movie version of the Fantastic Four. It's like, okay, they are their own thing. And it was really nice too to not have bombarding characters left and right in cameos, and not see Robert Downey Jr. as Doom either, because it's like, let them breathe first. And I think that was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was, as far as it being a sci-fi movie alone, I really enjoyed how much that they focused on space. They focused on Johnny actually loves space. He wants to go back to space. He's an astronaut. This is something that he's passionate about. Ben, is their crack pilot, and so he's going to be showing his expertise. And it really had that feeling, especially when they were on the mission, of everybody has their thing that they're good at, and they're all filling that niche to make the mission a success. We need a cloaking device. Okay, Sue, you need to touch the side of the craft so that you can make the whole thing invisible. Of course, Galactus could scan through it, so it was fine, or fine for Galactus anyway. But it was good to see that they all had a purpose and they had something to contribute. And it wasn't just like, I'm the dumb kid brother, I'm the dumb best friend, and Reed is the only smart one. Like, it realistically, if you're going to try and sell this in a live action environment, I think it was so smart to not make them all super geniuses like Reed, but give them enough intelligence that they could hold a conversation with him.
Right.
And it wasn't like he was just talking over everybody's head, and Ben going, well, I don't know about that, Stretcho. That doesn't make sense to me, or what, there wasn't anything like that. Yeah, like he did call him Stretch at one point too, which I appreciated. But I think setting it, aside from just what genre is it, setting it in its own earth really made me happy in a lot of ways. For one reason, because they are the original Marvel superheroes. So when they first came out, there wasn't a massive universe of characters for them to interact with. Now you get down to maybe issue 10 or 11 and Spider-Man shows up, and then later the X-Men show up, and we start doing little mini crossovers with other guys. But a lot of the characters that existed in early Marvel would actually spin out of their book. Right. The Silver Surfer spun out of Fantastic Four. Black Panther spun out of Fantastic Four. The Inhumans did. There are a lot of characters that was kind of their like debut in that title, and then they became popular enough to have their own thing later. So it felt very appropriate for them to just be by themselves doing their own thing. And also, as somebody that has tried to keep up with the MCU but has really gotten worn down by the number of TV shows and movies, it was really nice to come into this and be like, I don't need to know anything about what's going on in the MCU. Like, none of that matters for this movie. So it was so refreshing just to be like, this is self-contained pretty much, and you don't need any extra knowledge for it. So.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed, like, pre the end of Avengers Endgame, where things were connected, and like having to see something as a requirement is annoying, but seeing something and having it enhance your viewership of it, I thought was cool, for the longest Marvel run. But since Endgame, the stuff that they've been putting out has just not been the same level of quality. And, there's a few exceptions, but I was thinking kind of a similar thing going into this of, I haven't been keeping up with it lately like I used to. And so I was going into it thinking, oh crap, what am I going to miss from not having seen the last couple movies that came out? And that was, it was nice for me too, to be like, okay, I took a little break and I'm coming back into this movie. It's the first movie I've seen in a theater in quite a while, and in IMAX too, which was really cool. Like the IMAX intro jealous. Where it does like a countdown. It was all like Fantastic Four themed. It was really awesome. Neat. Like they took over as soon as the movie started. That was cool. But yeah, it was really neat to see that, and to have like its own kind of self-contained, where if you're a fan of the comics, you'll pick up extra things that you'll enjoy. But if you're not, or you haven't read them, it can still be a standalone movie. And I think it was really nice for Marvel to give us one of those, because while it is cool to have stuff that's connected, having everything connected everywhere all at once, oh, that's not Marvel, that's something else. But having everything connected in the multiverse, it starts to get a little bit too much. Like, it's hard to follow everything as a requirement, but it's still cool to see those Easter eggs, here and there. So Yeah.
If I have I guess an observation about sort of the direction Marvel has taken since Endgame, I do think focusing on a multiverse was a mistake ultimately. I think that it's made, while I like those ideas when they're confined to like the animated Spider-Verse movies, I think when you try and apply it to the whole universe, it's made such a complicated ball of yarn that you're kind of watching stuff going, I don't know what matters and what doesn't. I don't know if this cameo is actually going to be something that I care about later, or if it's just a cameo for this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, down to just the amount of content they were churning out on Disney Plus, where it's like, and we have multiple shows per year. We have WandaVision. Okay, that was cool. Hawkeye was cool. But we start to get to where it's like, and Moon Knight, and Secret Invasion, and Echo, and She-Hulk, and all these things, and they're all of like varying quality. You start to go like, oh my gosh, like, but do I have to watch this to keep up with it? Like, do I have to know what's going on? And so that was where I became disillusioned, was really with the TV shows, because I was like, there's just so much.
But
of
isn't that
it,
how
and
it
I'm
is in
tired of,
comics,
like,
though?
It is, but the advantage that comics still have that movies don't is every month you can go, I want to read about that guy. And you can just pick up their book, and for the most part, you're going to be okay. You can be like, I just want to read about Avengers. Okay, cool. Just read the main Avengers title. You'll pretty much know what's going on with the Avengers. Maybe there's an event title and they do a tie-in to it for a couple issues or something. But you can pretty much read that, and you don't have to read everything in the universe. It was starting to feel like what they were doing with the MCU was, well, you have to watch everything because it might not make sense if you don't. And I think just that, I don't know, that feeling of like, now it's an obligation for me to watch things was really like off-putting to me. So yeah, it being self-contained was so refreshing, because I was like, I can just, like, I brought my nieces to this and they were able to follow it. They didn't need to watch 25 movies beforehand,
Right.
Yeah.
So. Well, and it was cool too, because they gave us that, like, we started seeing, I think with what was it, Batman Begins, where they give us the origin story, but it's a very abbreviated version that's like, in case you've been living in a hole and you've never heard of the Fantastic Four,
right.
Here's a little bit to kind of just give you how they got started, but also not to reinvent their origin story again. And that was so nice not to sit there, because that was my biggest complaint with the first movie, is the whole thing was an origin story, and then by the time you get to the end, we finally get the payoff, and then it's over. It's like quick. It's like Voyager of 7 years of we're trying to get back to Earth, and then they're like, hey, we're back to Earth. That's the end. No more. Like, dude. So it was really cool to
so disappointing.
not only have that abbreviated version, but to also have, like, during a talk show, they say that 4 years ago is when the cosmic rays altered their DNA. So they've been doing this for 4 years, right at the beginning of the movie, which I thought was awesome to do. Let's go. Let's hit the ground running with this. Let's quit playing around.
Yeah, they did it. This seems to be a direction that comic book films are shifting now, because I know you haven't seen Superman yet, but one of the things that James Gunn does with the opening crawl is he's like, metahumans have existed for 300 years. 30 years ago, a kid was born on the planet Krypton. His parents sent him to Earth. 3 years ago, everybody was introduced to Superman. 3 days ago, or he goes, 3 hours ago, he lost his first fight. And then boom, that's where the movie starts. So they're like, they just go like boom, 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 boom. There's even a timeline in the Hall of Justice that they show in the movie that is sort of like a mural in the back that shows a timeline of like heroes that existed throughout the last 300 years, which is really cool, because it goes, here's all the history, and we're not going to explain it to you any more than that. Like, there's a Green Lantern in the movie, catch up. You just have to deal with it. We're not going to explain it. Hawkgirl's in the movie, you just got to figure it out. Here she is. Same with Mr. Terrific. It's like, they don't give you the backstory. They're just like, these people exist, and the world has known about them. So because we don't have to explain it to the world, we don't have to explain it to you. And we're just going to take you through this story here. And so I really hope that this is kind of like an overall trend for superhero movies, because it is old at this point, 20, 30 movies into the MCU, watching another origin story. Yeah. What's going to be the element of tragedy? What happens? How do they get their powers? That's not as interesting as seeing them go on an adventure once they've already kind of established themselves. So,
well, and especially something like Fantastic Four, where this is the third iteration of movie that we've had in the last 20 years, and all the stuff that happened in the like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that was like, just weird or super cartoony, which is cool because they reference in the movie too. Like they either show some clips or they like make their own clips in that style, but with the current actors' faces on them. That was really neat to see like a cartoon of them. It's like they were creating their own marketing within the movie because that was the world that they lived in. They lived in a world where their faces were marketed to the whole world for 4 years. So it was neat to kind of see that, because it was almost like they existed in our world too as a fan base. It's like all the fans who've been enjoying the Fantastic Four that we've been waiting for this whole time are in the movie basically like, oh, what are you guys going to do next? But how quickly they turn on them.
It did have that feeling. This is something that occurred to me after seeing it for a second time. And I mean, this seems to be a trend. This is like the direction that superhero movies are moving as a genre. Both Superman and this are very earnest movies. When you see people praising somebody that is being good, there's not some dark agenda underneath it. That person is actually just being good. And yes, there are dark things in the world, but these heroes don't need to be deconstructed. They don't need to be like brought down to their core so that we can see all of their flaws. Like they're genuinely people that are trying to do good and help the planet. And I think that having the public actually have trust in them, that was actually really refreshing. I've seen some people online call it corny, but I don't think it's corny so much as it is
corny on purpose.
It's just that they're actually not being sarcastic about everything. They're actually like, what I'm saying, you take it at face value. And that's something that maybe we remember from movies from like the 80s and 90s, but a lot of the modern generation that grew up with the MCU, that's not really something you see. There's always got to be some sarcasm, and there was a lot of jokes in this, but I didn't feel like they were ever mean-spirited or that they were used in a way that it like undercut the drama. It was just kind of like it's there. Like, stop telling me how to shoot sexy aliens. Stop calling her sexy. All that stuff. It was like, okay, maybe they would probably yell that in the moment or whatever. It kind of like fit with the scene, but it didn't feel like a massive tone shift or anything like that. And I don't know. I enjoyed that the people were not at their throats for the most of the movie. Now there is that one section where obviously, was it a good idea for Reed to tell them what Galactus wanted? Probably not. That probably wasn't a great thing to do, but he did. And because he's a little socially inept, and so he just let it out. And then the people start to turn on them. But even there, I feel like the way Sue got everybody back on her side was just by being honest about her feelings. She was like, look, I'm not going to give my son up for the planet, but I'm also not going to sacrifice the planet for my son. Like, just because I'm not taking the easy way out doesn't mean that we don't care about you guys. Like, we're still going to fight and find a way.
That was one of the things that was really cool, was to see them interact with each other. And even if you took the powers away, it's like they're a really good team, because Reed has got the super smarts, but Sue has the humanity, and she helps kind of ground Reed so he doesn't float away into, another multiverse just in his head. And then you have Ben and Johnny, and it's like they have this kind of like bro sibling rivalry thing, even though they're not related, but they
Right.
are, the four of them are a family. Like
Yeah.
you know, Ben may not be related by blood, but they are a family. And it was really cool to see those dynamics play out where like Ben and Johnny are just like goofing around and being bros and playing tricks on each other. And that really made me think of like the best crossovers that I've read with like Spider-Man and Johnny Storm, where it's like they're just they play pranks on each other and then they team up and play pranks on Ben, and they like show up and they're like, I'm from the future and you have to protect this bag from Reed because he's going to try to get this device inside of it and it's going to ruin the universe. And so Johnny's like, oh my gosh, or Ben's like, oh my gosh, I got to protect this thing. And so he goes around and then finally they open the bag and it's a note that's like, haha, gotcha. And so like that stuff in the comics was really neat because like in the movie, like I felt like they really tapped into that, where it's like they had the fun. And so all of the jokes felt like they were in service to the characters and the story, instead of the other way around, where it's like we're trying to make the characters in the story by adding these jokes in and, you know, forcing the issue. So it was really neat.
Felt like
to
a
see it play out that
natural,
way.
like you're saying, like a natural part of their personality.
Yeah.
As opposed to it being kind of shoehorned in. So I really liked it. I overall think the only character that kind of got the short end of the stick was probably Ben, which doesn't mean that he wasn't good in the movie. It just means that they didn't really give him as much screen time, either with his powers or, you know, with the family overall as some of the others. It was more focused on kind of like his expertise. And I mean, there were scenes of him like bonding with a woman, which, by the way, Rachel Roz, what did they name her? Rosman. So Roz is Jack Kirby's wife, Rosalind. He called her Roz. So that's why they did that. It was a nod to him. And Ben is Jack Kirby's self-insert character. So would I have preferred that it was Alicia Masters? Yes, especially because I think Natasha Lyonne looks really good for that part, and she could have played her.
That's who I thought it was.
But
at first.
Yeah. So, but they wanted to do a nod to Kirby with that, and there actually was a little cameo. They had two guys, one of them that was dressed up as Stan Lee and one that was dressed up as Jack Kirby, that look out the window at one point when the surfer first arrives. Okay. And there's a bunch of Kirby like pen art up on the wall. And they just look out and they're like, would you look at that? And that was their little, because they were like, well, we have to do a Stan and Jack cameo in this, even though they're not both alive. So they actually had actors like play them, which was kind
both
of
of them
nod.
too, like not just Stan, you know, having like his cameos were cool and everything, but it was kind of like he was the poster child, and it's like, well, what about everybody else that was involved with this? You know, not to take credit away from him, but
sure.
So it's kind of neat to see that, because especially with the Fantastic Four, like there are four characters who collaborate. So if you're going to pay homage to the creators of Fantastic Four, wouldn't you also want to talk about collaboration? Like collaborate and listen. Come on, Fantastic Four is back with a brand new edition. Ice, baby.
Ice. Yeah, so it was neat. I mean, some of these things are not things that I picked up on my first watch, but I actually something, you know how Google just like recommends articles to you or whatever. I was on Google and it was like Stan Lee's cameo in Fantastic Four, and I'm like, what? So I looked at it and they were like, oh yeah, he was. So I noticed the comic book art on the wall, but I didn't notice that there was somebody dressed up as Stan Lee apparently next to the
It was probably
Kirby guy,
so quick, and there's so much going on. Like I kind of felt like that. Like I'll wait for the YouTubers to create the Easter egg, 12 Easter eggs in Fantastic Four movie that you missed, and be like, how many of these did I actually miss, and how many did I actually catch?
I mean, if there's one thing that I know was in the movie that would have been a cool Easter egg that I know that they cut, it's all of John Malkovich's scenes as the Red Ghost, which he's one of their earliest villains. He's like a Russian cosmonaut, of course, mad scientist that has these super apes that he gives super intelligence, and they fight the FF. and that's one of their early adventures. So they actually filmed a whole bunch of stuff with Malkovich as the Red Ghost, and you do see an animated version of him at the very end of the movie. But they decided that like the intro needed to be compressed more so they could just get to the main meat of the story. So they didn't. I guess they cut out like the short little adventure where the FF are fighting him. But they name dropped. Well, they didn't just name drop. They showed the Mole Man, which I was like, that's so cool because he's the first villain that they ever faced. So of course we have to have him in there.
And his actor too was on Cobra Kai, the TV series.
Was he really?
And he plays a very similar character. So like when I saw him as the Mole Man, I was like, that is some good casting right there. Like good choice. Like he's such a like goofy guy, but he's got heart. He's got this heart somewhere underneath all of his bravado and goofiness. And I don't know, it seemed like a good fit. So
yeah, when he said he was tracking multiple criminal organizations, Reed at one point, he just name dropped like a whole bunch of Fantastic Four villains. He's like, yeah, well, the Puppet Master is over there, and the Wizard is over there. The Wizard is the leader of the Frightful Four.
The Frightful Four.
Yeah, exactly. The Fearsome Five. Yeah, the
Sinister
Four.
Six.
And he also mentioned Diablo, who's like an alchemist. That's one of their villains. So it was really cool as a fan that even though they're only going to show us a couple of those guys, that they like name dropped a whole bunch of them, and then they're like, no, they totally exist.
They also name dropped or had the Thinker. I wrote down.
Oh yes, the Mad Thinker.
And then there was one that was like a big evil fish dude. I didn't know who that was. I don't think they name dropped him, but they showed this big evil fish dude.
It must have been really quick because I don't remember seeing
But there was one seat that was empty in every news broadcast, and there was this little flag placard sign that said Latveria on it. And I was like, okay, all right. And I was like, is he going to show up? Am I going to see Robert Downey Jr. come out? And I'm like, all right, get ready for this. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
The movie's good so far. So if he shows up, it'll be okay. And he wasn't there. And I was like, good. Not ready for that yet.
No, I think it's very smart to not lead with him.
Yeah.
Especially because they seem to be positioning him as like overall villain for the whole Marvel universe, which he totally can be.
Avengers Doomsday, I think they called it.
Yeah.
Doomsday, like Superman villain Doomsday.
Well, hopefully we don't see Doomsday in a movie again for a very long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was glad that we only got the tease of him just showing the mask and then sort of putting it on at the end, and that we didn't do anything more with it, because I really feel like that would have overwhelmed the movie. And yeah, like you said, like these characters need room to breathe. We need time to get to know this cast and see how they interact and all of those things. And it was just really nice. It was really nice to have them in their own pocket universe.
Well, and Galactus was sort of the like Pepe Le Pew, slow villain chasing after you, because he's just now rounding Mars. Oh, he's just now, approaching. Oh, he's getting out of a ship. Bruh. Oh, he's walking like Godzilla down the street. He's gonna fall into our trap. But it was kind of a cool slow burn because you have that Galactus, his looming presence. And also it gave us screen time to see the Fantastic Four do their thing instead of like a big action flick where it's like action, action, action all the time and you can't keep up with what was going on. It kind of slowed the movie down enough that you could actually really see the characters shine, like Johnny, where he apparently can dissect an entire alien language based on one phrase and then be able to speak it fluently to an alien. I was like, okay, I like that Johnny is not dumb. And Reed does say at the beginning that he brought the 4 best minds with him to space. And I was like, how is Johnny one of the 4 best minds to bring to space? Because it's kind of like suspect, like your best friend, your wife, and your brother are the 4 best minds that you're going to bring to space. I don't know about that. But it was kind of cool.
Seems a little suspect.
It was cool to see Johnny have some kind of talent, like he could be, I don't know, like a musician or or a songwriter or something that like where he deals with words like a writer, and so
Mhm.
maybe he's able to figure out this alien language because he's, I don't know, good with languages or something. But they didn't give us any breadcrumbs, at least that I noticed, as to how he was able to do this and why. It was just like, I'll play around with this, and then he goes and tinkers and he's like, look, I can speak their language. Like, whoa, dude.
Yeah. It felt to me like they were borrowing aspects from so especially when the early 2000s movies came out, like the Ultimate line was really popular at Marvel, and they were outselling the main books. In the Ultimate Fantastic Four, they are part of like a think tank together, and they're all smart, even though
Hmm.
Johnny is still kind of an idiot, but they're like all smart. And Sue is like almost on Reed's level in those comics.
Wow.
Which was, it had its pros and cons. The series really fell off and became bad towards the end, but kind of all the Ultimate books did. But it almost felt like they were taking a couple aspects from that and going, well, maybe let's kind of elevate everybody so that they can keep up with Reed a little bit. It didn't bother me that he could feed the information into a computer and get an algorithm to translate it.
True.
But the idea that he could speak it fluently was kind of the sticking point for
Yeah.
me, where I was like, that feels like a little bit too smart. But what it does is it positions him as the character that multiple times in the movie is the one that looks like he's going to have to make the sacrifice play to
Hmm.
save the team. There was obviously at the very end, he was like, take me instead of the baby. And of
Yeah.
course, she's like, it's not your sacrifice to make. Like, I can't, Galactus isn't going to settle for you,
Hmm.
basically. And, but he tried to then, and then at the end, when Galactus started coming out of the teleporter, again, he was ready to, he's like, tell Franklin that his uncle loves him, and I'm going to go, fly into him to push him in,
Yeah.
basically. And the only reason he didn't is because Shalabal pushed him out of the way at the last second.
Hmm.
So that was neat because that is very much a character trait that he has in the comics. Like when the chips are down, he's willing to lay his life on the line for his family. And in fact, during Jonathan Hickman's run, he actually does sacrifice his life to save Ben and Franklin and Valeria.
Hmm.
They're basically a nihilist, and like an army is coming through the negative zone, and they can't find a way to like beat back the tide. And so Johnny is just like, protect the kids, Ben, and he goes in there and shuts the portal from the other side, and you don't see him for several years in the comics because that was, that
Yeah.
that was him making that play. So for me, as somebody that had read the comics, those moments and them kind of putting him in that position made me go, oh my gosh, are they actually going to kill him in the first movie? Like, I almost believed it just because I know that he's done that in the comic books
Hmm.
before. So I'm willing to let him being a little bit too smart. And I mean, I'll admit that it doesn't really make sense that he could speak the language, but the sort of emotion of the scene and him getting Shalabal to feel remorse for what she's done
Yeah.
was really important for the story. So,
Kind of needed
and
to
and it,
happen.
yeah, and it didn't feel like something. It was. We'll put it this way: it was like more exciting or more surprising to have Johnny be the guy to bring her to that moment than it would have been if it was just Reed or Sue or somebody
Yeah.
like that.
Although it,
So,
it, it kind of makes sense a little bit though, because he was motivated. So like,
hmm
thank goodness that he wasn't a womanizer that flirted with, like anything that moved. Like in the
right.
first movie. But at the same time, like, hey, this, alien space chick is kind of sexy. Like,
hmm
he kind of digs her. So I feel like that gives him motivation that he wants to show off because he knows that
Right.
he's got to really do something big to impress her because she's, coated in silver on this board that allows her to travel through space at light speed. So, he's going to have to up his game a little bit. He can't just walk up and be like, "Hey, you travel to this galaxy often?" you know. So
Right.
so he's like, all right, I'm gonna get in her head, and I'm gonna learn this language, and then I'm gonna, sweet talk her by speaking in her own language. It's like a guy who goes, all right, I'm gonna sit and reflect, and I'm gonna write some beautiful
Mm.
poetry, and then I'm gonna read it to you, and you're just gonna be like, wow, you see me like no one else does. So I thought that part of it was cool, where it's like he genuinely felt enough of a connection that he wanted to be like, I see you, and I see the pain that you've been through. I see the struggle that you've been through, and you don't have to do this. And it was like, wow, he just
Yeah.
turned something that would have been like a, lustful endeavor to a, like romantic, like, hey, there's something here. And that was kind of cool to see. Like,
Yeah,
unexpected.
so they really played up Johnny's womanizing to cartoonish levels in the 2000s movies. And unfortunately the takeaway from that for most of the general population is, oh, because it's Chris Evans, he's incredibly charismatic. He can pull off those lines because he is who he is. People go, oh, that's the character of Johnny Storm. When he has had a string of girlfriends in the comics, but he's always monogamous with them. And it's usually like kind of a long-term thing. There was like Dory Evans, which was one of his early ones. And then I think maybe he went to college and then things didn't work out. John Byrne tried to write a section where Ben was off world and Johnny got with Alicia, but another writer later fixed that by saying, no, that wasn't really Alicia. It was a Skrull named Elijah. And Johnny was like, I still love you, even though you're a Skrull. Like, it doesn't
Wow.
matter to me that you're not. So
Scroll!
actually, like, multiple times in
Scroll!
the comics, he's displayed that, like, he kind of like falls in love easily, but it's not like a shallow thing for him
Right.
necessarily. Like, yeah, he can be goofy and pal around with Spider-Man and Ben and all that, but his relationships usually aren't just like this kind of surface level thing that's like just about being physical. So it
Okay.
made me so happy that they finally showed like a deeper side to his character where
Hmm.
you could go, oh wow, he's not just like the dumb jock that's along for the ride. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's kind of how I felt like with the language and the super smart thing. I was like, I almost
Mhm.
I almost overlooked that because it was just so enjoyable to watch that I was like, okay, this version of Johnny is, smarter than the average Johnny, so that's okay
Right.
because they didn't ruin his character by making him something that he really isn't in the original comics. So
Hmm.
so that was really neat to see. Like Johnny's really my favorite character mainly because of Spider-Man and their little,
Oh, of
bro ship that
course.
they have going on. So I was really happy to see him like be a really cool character instead of a throwaway character.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It was. I feel like they did a really good job of balancing moments with the whole team, which you've
Yeah.
already said, but they really communicated how Reed having as much knowledge as he does is kind of a curse in some ways because he's
Hmm.
always spinning the variables. And
Yeah.
especially in the scene where he's like, well, you have to understand where the world is coming from because they have a solution that's available and it's ethical and it's, all of these things. And Sue is like, are you kidding me? And he's like, well, I'm not going to do it, but I have to at least weigh that option
Yeah.
because that's the only option that we have right now. And it's kind of like, yeah, that's Reed. Like even if it takes him to a place that emotionally they're not willing to go, he's going to be the guy that considers those options because that's just how his brain works.
Right.
He's going to look at all the variables. And so, do we want to give our son to Galactus? Not really, but I understand why the world thinks that we should, was kind of what he
Hmm.
was saying. So,
Right.
yeah.
He can consider the alternate angles and
Mhm.
and other perspectives. And it was cool too because like for first when I saw the casting, I was like, I don't know, like Pedro's cool, but he's not escorting,
Right.
some small person that needs to be protected. He's supposed to be a super genius. And I was like, I don't know if he can pull off being a super genius. And like I'm watching
Hmm.
the movie and I'm like, I don't know if I buy the super genius angle. But then I kind of
Sure.
realized I was like, the super genius that he is was more, I think, that's all he used to be. But then, 4 years
Right.
of the Fantastic Four, and now with a child on the way, he's really more of like super genius father. And so I started kind of looking
Hmm.
at him like, okay, he's more of like the father who is the super genius, but it's not that he's just so smart and that's all he is. It's tempered with humanity and emotion
Hmm.
and a little bit of tact, a little bit, just enough that he doesn't come off as like abrasively cold.
Sure.
And I thought that was
Yeah.
really cool because it's like we have a really human, almost believable version of Reed where he is super smart, but that's not all he is. There's more to him than that. And like all of the characters really had that kind of angle where it's like they're not just one thing. They don't just do
Hmm.
one thing. They're very dynamic, but it's not all about their flaws. It's not like what are all the things that they do
Right.
wrong? What is their dark side? Let's have cue the emotional music and have a scene where we talk
Hmm.
about our, inner struggles. It's like we didn't need to do that because they're heroes. They're not perfect. They make mistakes.
Right.
They figure things out like any other person would, but they're kind of just more like regular people, rather than like
Yeah.
really flawed characters.
They're regular people that are thrust into this situation and they're making the best of it. They're trying
Yeah.
to do the best thing they can. I really liked the moment of I think it was one of the best portrayals of Reed that feels like the best of the comic books when he has the moment where he's just with Franklin and he's like, so I've been trying to figure out who you are, and I've got all these devices and all this stuff. And he's like, but the more I scan you and don't find anything, the more I'm afraid because I realize I don't know anything. So
Hmm.
he turns it off
Yeah.
and he's like, so I'm going to let you tell me who you are. And
I was
if
like,
you are an all
yes.
powerful space god, I'd like to know that now. That would
Yeah.
really be helpful. But I really like that they showed that side of him because
Hmm.
the story that we covered years ago, Solve Everything, a
Yeah.
lot of the kind of crux of that was that idea that Reed is not going to be like his father. His father did devote himself wholly to science, went time traveling, and basically left Reed alone for years. And like that, so he's been through that already. He
Right.
knows what that's like, and he's like, I'm not going to do that to my kids. Like I'm actually going to be there for them. So I just it made me so happy that they did that scene and they didn't just make him one note. He wasn't just
Hmm.
one thing.
Yeah.
So
And he didn't overuse his stretchy powers either. Like we didn't see him doing
no.
science and like every time he moved, he's like, I don't need to move. I'll just sit in this chair and go, all crazy. Like he used it a couple times just for us to kind of, I think, see that yes, he does have those
Mhm.
powers and he does use them, but he doesn't rely on them. It's more of a
Right.
like when it's clobbering time, and I only say that in the cartoons, not in real life. Uh, when it's clobbering time, he'll, use his stretchy powers, but it's not, that's not his superpower. His superpower is his brain,
Right. Yeah. It really
or
is.
primary, I guess. But Sue's powers were interesting because like at first I was kind of disappointed because they were more like rainbow sparklies, waves than force
Oh, I
fields.
think it was supposed to be like light refracting
And
off of
that's
the invisible force field.
And that's what I eventually
Yeah.
figured out because at first I was like, I don't like this. I don't like how this looks. I want the force fields. But then as I watched the movie, that I came to the same conclusion of like, it's more
Hmm.
like a prism when you shine light through it and it kind of comes out and it's more of like a force rather than a force field. And I was like,
Hmm.
that kind of fits a little bit better because she's bending light when she turns invisible. So when she's
Right.
projecting force fields, she's also bending light to do it. So it's like one power instead of two separate things. So I was like, okay, I
Yeah.
see what they did there. That I think that makes sense.
Well, there have been so many different artistic interpretations over the years. I mean, Kirby did like the dotted line of
Yeah.
like, here's where the force field is. There was an artist in the like the late 90s that worked on the book when I was getting it in the mail that actually would just show like the debris and stuff and everything that had been displaced by the field, and then he wouldn't draw the field at all. You were
Hmm.
just seeing the effect that it had on the environment. So that was cool too. But I felt like they kind of found a middle ground where like when she cloaked the ship, it wasn't 100% cloaked. You could still see a little bit of
Yeah.
light, like when you see a cloaking device in Star Trek, you can tell there's a distortion, but
Mhm.
it's mostly gone. And it seemed to be kind of the same with her force fields, where it was like, yeah, there's a distortion, and she actually used it at the fight at the end, like the visual effect of it, because she threw distortion in Galactus's face. Then Johnny throws the flames into his eyes
Yeah.
to blind him, so they could move the baby
That
carriage out
was
of the way.
awesome. And the oil
So it
tanker and the
was.
fire and all that stuff, like
Oh
the
yeah,
way that
man.
they like use their powers in coordination with each other. That's what I wanted
Hmm.
from the very first Fantastic Four movie. Is
I
they
know.
finally got to that point, and I was like, "Let's do it!" And they're like, "Done." And this time we actually got to see it, and I was like, "Thank you! I've been waiting 20 years to see this."
Hmm. Yeah, it was so satisfying to see them combine their powers, and also for them to use them in ways that you don't initially think about, like Johnny
Hmm.
being able to suck up an entire fire in a building. Yeah, he can just
Yeah,
absorb fire. So he doesn't need to go in and rescue the people. He can literally just stop the fire by absorbing it all. And those are the kind of things that, unless you've really read the comics and you've seen how varied their abilities can be, even though it seems like, okay, he's just a guy that catches on fire, throws fire, and flies. It's like, well, no, actually, he can be really creative with it, and he can do all kinds of
yeah,
things that you couldn't imagine. Like I was also happy to see, like, he rescued the kid, and the front part of him was
yeah.
like his hands were not on flame, but the back
But
of
his
him
back
is,
was, and he was
which
flying, and I was like,
which is
"What?
totally,
What?
yes,
He
which
can
is
do that?
totally something
That's
that he
cool!
does to rescue people.
Why have
Yeah.
I not seen this before? That's awesome."
So again, it was, oh man, I can't tell you, you've had good Spider-Man movies, man. Like you have. You've
Yeah.
had some good Spider-Man movies. Even the ones that were not like maybe the greatest, like Spider-Man 3 or Amazing Spider-Man 2, that's probably the
Bully
worst
Maguire.
offender for me because yeah, I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is probably the worst offender for me just because it gave us one of the most iconic comic book moments of all time, but it was in that movie that was not very good.
Where the web's like
So,
reaching and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like yes, they did that moment really well, but like everything around it was kind of crap.
Mm,
So it was just like the version of the Goblin was really not very exciting. The Yeah, I don't know. It was just, it's a
yeah.
shame that they wasted that moment on that movie. So for somebody that's, had to make do basically with the Fox films for, I don't know, 20 years now, it's so nice to watch something and be like, they get the characters. They actually understand who they are as people, and they understand their powers. Like I wanted to get up and cheer in the theater. I was so excited because I was just like,
Wow.
oh man, like finally.
Yeah, there were a lot of parts where I was just like I'm like gripping my seat, especially sitting in IMAX and not the front row, but like there's I think like 3 or 4 rows, and then there's an aisle, and then
Mhm.
starts the main seating area. So I always sit in the front of the main seating area so that I'm just like back here, like I'm gonna watch this movie.
Oh
Look, you have to
wow.
turn your head to, oh, there's Galactus, there he goes. Oh, look, there's,
Oh my god.
so it was really cool, and the sound was like so loud, like my ears were just like, but it was really cool to like immerse me in the experience of watching this, like that part where Johnny, like
Mhm.
he turns the flame off of his front half and he rescues the kid. I'm just sitting there like, this is so cool. I want to shout, but there's other people in the theater.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess the biggest sort of elephant in the room that we haven't talked about is Shallowball as the surfer instead of Norrin Rad.
Mhm.
Why that doesn't bother me is because they made it work so well for this
Yeah,
narrative
it couldn't have
that
been
this
anyone
story
else.
could not have played out the same way if it was Norrin Rad. I also have a sneaking suspicion that they may be saving Norrin Rad for the MCU proper. And so where did Galactus end up? I mean, maybe we'll never see him again. I
Maybe
don't
we can
know.
visit that like
But
in a couple of years. Like let's put
but
that on the
yeah,
back burner because we've done Galactus
right.
in the first round of movies too.
Exactly. Yeah, they did him as a cloud.
Yeah.
It was not it was
I'm a little
nice to
cloud.
have him
Look
actually
out.
be
Here
like
comes my
a
cloud.
person. Well, and even there, he referenced part of his backstory because he's like, billions of years ago, I was tiny like you. And
Mm.
that's something from Mark Waid's run where he actually explored like, hey, what was he? His name was actually Galen of all things.
Mm.
When he
Of
was
course.
more of a regular biped.
Those
But
regular
yeah,
bipeds.
that was something that they showed in the comics at one point. When Mark Waid was writing,
Mhm.
where he actually used to be just a dude, but now he sort of inherited this incredible hunger that is insatiable and is traveling the universe, just killing everywhere he
The
goes.
Fantastic Four and the Incredible Hunger, or versus
It,
the Fantastic
yeah,
Four versus the Incredible Hunger.
I mean,
Tune
pretty
in.
much. So yeah, it was one of those things where I really feel like if you're looking at news coverage of the movie, if you're looking at, whichever side of the debate you're on, I wanted to see Norin Rad, or no, I think it's fine that we have Shala Ball, whatever reason. I think when you watch the movie, you'll understand that like the narrative kind of falls apart if it's not her.
Hmm.
So I really didn't have a problem with it because it was so well justified in the movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and same thing kind of like, with like what we said about Johnny. It's like that
mhm.
whole thing wouldn't have worked if it was Norrin Rad because it would have, been different. It wouldn't have been the characters.
Right.
It would have taken us in a different direction. And it was neat to see it all kind of like everything seemed like it all fit together well. Like when the baby's on the way, Reed is thinking, not just like about the house, but he's thinking beyond that. He's thinking like basically baby proof the world. Like the world
Yeah.
isn't safe, but I'm smart enough to baby proof the whole world. Or when they're like, we're gonna move heaven and earth to get this done, he's like, that's it. That's the answer. Literally, we are going to move heaven and earth. Literally, that's what we will do. Like, what?
That was So I didn't know where they were going with that, but as soon as he was like, "Oh yeah, we just have to hook up teleporters to the whole planet," I was like, "Oh my gosh, that actually is a pretty genius idea that
Yeah.
seems like it might work."
I'm like, that's a Reed
And
idea right there. Yep.
yeah, it definitely is. But again, it's that they're injecting enough sci-fi stuff in it for me to go, this now feels like the comic books. Whereas I feel like in the old movies, they were like, we want an excuse for them to just have an action scene and like maybe save some people falling
Mm,
off a bridge, or we want them to be able to punch Doom or something. And it's like, yeah, that's a part of it. But seeing them actually be space explorers was like, thank
yeah.
goodness. Like that's a huge part of who they are.
Hmm.
So,
Well, a lot of the movie was very like not usually what you get. So like when the world is
mhm.
ending, basically, there's this new news broadcast that goes around that says, use your time wisely to be with those we cherish. And it's this very like
Mhm.
heartfelt thing. And I'm just like, the world is ending. Where's the rioting and the looting and the crazy insanity? But this earth, that doesn't happen because they have so
Right.
much confidence in the Fantastic Four who've been around for 4 years. And they're just like, okay, we're going to prepare ourselves. And that was really interesting to see that because yeah,
Mhm.
anytime you see something where the world is ending, it's like mass hysteria. We have to see everybody like running around, and then we have to get the CG out so that we can start watching the
Oh
earth being
yeah.
destroyed and up the stakes. And but it's like they
Mhm.
didn't use the visual to set the stakes. They used the presence of what was happening. They used the
Mhm.
dynamics of the people, and that's really what created the stakes. Obviously Galactus is huge and he's going to eat the planet, but
Right.
we don't actually see him like just start, destroying it. And it was
You
kind of neat to
Sorry, you reminded me of
what?
the scene where he lands and he like when he first lands in the water, he like puts his hand in some trees and he holds it up and it looks like he sniffs it. And I thought so much that he was going to take a bite in that moment, but he doesn't. He like puts the
I'm going
trees
to
down.
devour this
But I was
planet
like,
one handful
I
at a
was like,
time.
is he going to take a bite? What is he about to do?
That would take a
No,
long time.
you're talking about the stakes. The thing is they showed us about the halfway point through the movie. They showed us exactly what it looks like when he destroys a planet. So
Yeah, true.
we saw that out in space. So now that we've seen that, they don't need to show that to us again. Like we get it, we understand what's going to happen to the Earth, and yeah, it was nice to have like the threat of him looming over them was more than what he actually did when he got there, because well,
Yeah.
they had a plan that didn't exactly go to
Yeah.
plan, but
So
they made it
stand
work.
in this little tiny triangle. So Galactus is just like, I'm gonna mosey over. Oh, there's what I want. Look at these towers that are standing there. I'll stand in the middle of them because I'm Galactus and nothing can hurt me. So what could happen? But it was funny when he takes his foot and there's the line and he steps and then he stops. And you're like, no, it's not gonna work. Like, and then Sue,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like just every ounce of, I was like, this is a mother
Mhm.
protecting her child right there. Like the
Oh yeah.
adrenaline is causing her to use her powers in a way that's gonna burn her out. And then it does.
Mhm.
Like,
It
holy
did.
crap.
It actually killed her.
And
Yeah.
it was like I'm watching this and I'm just like, no, come on, don't do that. And then they bring Franklin and he's like a fake baby all of a sudden. He's like, ah, like the way he moves and the way he looks. I'm just like, whoa, fake baby. Like that kind of took
You know
me
what
out
it
of
looked
it.
like? It looked like they had the body of a real baby at certain parts, but that they'd like comped a CG expression
Hmm.
on so that they could make the baby's face look the way they wanted it to.
Yeah. I noticed a lot of like compositing issues where it looked like they were taking,
Mhm.
two or three different things and putting them in the same shot in layers. But
Okay.
like the thing, he didn't look bad, like bad CGI, but a lot of
Sure.
times when I saw him, he didn't exactly fit the scene. Like he looked different, like
Huh.
he was either painted on or put into the scene after or something. It was like a weird, and I don't know if that was just like, IMAX being able to spot that or if that was actually um, I don't know, but I just
I
kind of
think
noticed
it
that it was
might
weird.
be because I didn't notice that as much. In fact, the most CGI that Franklin looked to me was right when he was first born. But that actually,
Oh,
for the people that don't know, uh, for the people that don't know, my sister is a nurse midwife, so she's seen all kinds of births all the time, and she always complains about in movies and TV shows. She's like, "That's not a newborn baby. That baby's like 3 or 4 months old." But you legally can't show a newborn baby in a movie, which
yeah.
is why they don't do that. But they CGI'd a newborn baby to be there right after Sue gave birth, which I was like, I
Mhm.
guess that's a good workaround. Like
So
you're
I have no experience with that kind of thing, but I know
right.
that it tends to be kind of messy, and so doing something like
Yeah.
that in zero G, I was cringing because I was like, where are we going with this? But they kept it very clean and it was
Yes.
okay, but I was kind of scared there for a moment, like, how realistic is this going to get? Because this could be like Klingons in space all over again, where the anti-grav and
Oh
they're
my
shooting and the
gosh.
pink blood is everywhere. I was like, I'm glad that we did not do that. So thank you for that.
Thankfully, yes, thankfully it did not get as messy as realistically it would have, because that would have probably raised the rating of the movie a little bit and been a
Yeah.
little gross. But again, this is another moment in the movie that just made me think about the comic books. There's so many of these, and
Hmm.
that's why I'm like sitting here like so excited, because when she gave birth to Franklin, he was bathed in cosmic energy and her pregnancy was incredibly traumatic on her body. So my sister again, she was like, "Oh, she's like the way she's screaming and the way she's moving and all that is like not normal or realistic." But I was thinking like, "Okay, but have you ever given birth to a baby that's bathed in the power cosmic before?" Like it's different because there's a sci-fi element happening as well as just the regular physiological element.
Sure.
They actually had to go to the negative zone, and Reed had to get Annihilus's cosmic control rod that he keeps on his neck in order to use that device to save Sue from dying when Franklin was born.
Hmm.
And when Valeria was born, there was a similar situation happening, and Dune came up with a solution that Reed couldn't think of, basically, to save Sue's life so that
Ooh.
she could deliver the baby safely. And he was like, "Yeah, so I'll do this, but then I get to be the godfather and I get to name her." And that's why Valeria Richards is named after Valeria
Oh.
Doom's love that
We
you
didn't
read
talk
about
about
in
that in
Books
the
of
Books
Doom.
of Doom episode. I don't remember you
It
mentioning
wasn't
that.
really relevant to that story, but yeah, that's why Valeria Richards has that name because
Okay.
he saved her when they couldn't. So every one of her pregnancies with one of these kids is like fraught with danger. And there's always this like sci-fi cosmic element to it because whatever happened to them in space is their children are like incredibly powerful
Yeah.
and they have like a more concentrated version of it.
Well,
So
and cosmic rays must have the same effects as like an epidural, because yeah, it was pretty much just like, here we go, and and we're good to go.
well,
Oh,
it seemed to me like Galactus actually induced labor early because
yeah,
he wanted the
true.
child
That's true.
because he's talking to her and then he like waved his arm and she all of a sudden started
Yeah.
going, I'm
It's like,
going into
oh, it's
labor.
time.
Yeah, so he was like, I want the kid, give him to me now. And
So
yeah,
maybe
so
he
he
like
basically
whatever
induced
he
it.
did, he basically made it like the easiest pregnancy in the history of humanity. Thanks,
As
Galactus.
far as
Like,
time, yeah.
yeah, but like we shouldn't have banished him. We should have. That's a superpower. Like he could have used that to bless people, and we could have found a way to feed his hunger instead of eating planets. Missed opportunity. Maybe
So
not,
I
but
I want to I know we're jumping around a lot, but as you said feed is hunger, you reminded me one of the most ingenious things that they did with this story that I've never read a Fantastic Four comic where they thought of this. Franklin, the nature of his powers is creative. He's basically creativity incarnate. That's what Franklin
hmm,
is going to become. He can create universes, he can create planets, anything that his mind can conceive of, he can make reality. And it's so dangerous that he's like doing it in his sleep in the
ah,
comics, like when he's really little. And so Reed has to actually go to Professor X and be like, I need you to put mental blocks on him so that he stops doing this
yikes.
because he's going to make something at some point that's so out of control that it like displaces our universe and we're not going to be able to do anything to stop it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so he actually has to go to him to like suppress Franklin's powers
Wow.
basically with a mental block. But whenever you see future Franklin, it's always in the guise of he's exploring the universe, but as he's going places, he's like creating new lives and new civilizations and stuff.
And boldly
And he's
going.
just
We're
using, yeah, he's basically, yeah. So what they did in this movie that was so smart is they positioned him as the polar opposite of Galactus. And he really is, because
hmm,
Galactus is an embodiment of destruction. He just
destroyer of
kills and
worlds, creator
destroys.
of worlds.
Exactly. So
Okay.
it makes so much sense that Galactus would be like, this entity can just keep generating planets for me forever, and I'll never be hungry. So when I thought about the
Huh.
nature of what Franklin's powers actually are, I was like, oh my gosh, he's right. Like Franklin could, maybe he couldn't take away your hunger, but he could feed you
Yeah.
endlessly, and you
Well,
could
he
just sit
could
there in the chair
create
and never do
food
anything.
with no
Yeah,
consequence, basically.
basically.
He's like a
So
replicator.
that I don't know how no writer has never thought of that before, but I was like, that's such a good idea.
Hmm.
And it makes so much sense that Galactus would scan him and be like, oh, that's what I need. I don't need your planet. I need that kid. Like,
Yeah.
so
Wow.
so before there's really only one more thing that I wanted to really discuss before we go to final thoughts. And that was that the setting was so unique and the way they did the sort of like retro 1960s look, but they had like future tech that we don't have. They did it actually so well that I really don't care to see them join the MCU. Like I would be totally fine if they just do their own thing in their own movies, and for them to sort of go into the same world as all those heroes, I'm actually not really that excited about that. Like I think that they did such good world building here that it really doesn't need a ton of cameos and other things from the larger MCU to succeed. And their world looks and feels so unique with again
Hmm.
they're listening to messages from space but they're recording them to vinyl. And
Yeah.
things like that where it's like okay, so you have space technology and you have FTL technology, but you still are listening to vinyls, basically. But all of that stuff, it worked so well that I'm like, I don't want to see them leave their reality.
Well, that's the thing though, is like they are so essential to their reality that
Hmm.
there's not really any way that they like why would they leave? Why would they leave?
Yeah.
Maybe they
Yeah.
would go on missions where they travel the multiverse and hook up with the MCU to help them out.
Sure.
But it's kind of more of like a consultant. Hey, there's a really smart guy out there on another Earth that we should ask about this problem. So that way the Fantastic Four doesn't have to get involved in every single skirmish that goes on in the MCU, but
Sure.
they have an in, so that way if there's something that happens, they can call them, we can have a crossover, and then they can go back to where they are. And I kind of hope that maybe that's the direction we're going, is everybody is
Yeah.
kind of like on separate islands, but we all meet at the playground, we have a good time, and then we all
Hmm.
go home.
Yeah, that would be, I think, kind of a best case scenario for where they go with it in the
Mhm.
future.
The
All right. Well,
last The
oh,
last
I'm
thing that
sorry.
we
Go ahead.
had was a little bit about the score. So the
Oh,
thing that
yeah.
stood out to me the most with Giacchino's theme was when it goes Fantastic Four. Sounds like Beethoven's Fifth a little bit, like like I was like singing all the way home.
That's funny. It does have a very sort of predictable build in the way it
Hmm.
builds up to them saying Fantastic Four at the end. When I saw them doing that in the trailers, I was kind of like, man, I hope they don't actually sing the name of the team in the movie. But it wasn't. It was very pervasive in the trailers. We'll put it that way.
Mm.
It was like they just kept doing it. But in the movie, it was like, okay, one or two times they actually say it out loud, but most of the time it's just the orchestra carrying us there. And I like that a little bit better. So I do have to say, though, between John Ottman and Michael Giacchino, we now have two separate composers that usually do stuff that's not quite so in your face, doing incredibly in your face scores for the Fantastic Four that are like, you will notice me during the movie. So, I mean, that wasn't a bad thing. It was just, it was something that I definitely noticed
Mm.
about it. The Superman movie, again, that's what I'm making my comparison to because that's the other big superhero movie that I saw this year. But what they did for that, for the score, was basically to raise John Williams' theme an octave and run it through a synthesized electric guitar. And then that was the score. That was what
Whoa,
it was based around.
weird.
So I was not so much a fan of that because it felt like I've heard this before and it's associated with a different version of this character.
Hmm.
So it was like distracting, whereas this felt like it actually supported the movie more and like kind of,
Yeah.
built with the action and everything.
Well,
So
that's always the hard
yeah.
part as reboots happen and time
Hmm.
passes and people change as to who's working on these films. It's like, do you create something completely new or do you try to recycle what was done before or what do you do with it? Like the
Sure.
Terminator movies, for example, they have that sort of like core theme that was developed in Terminator 2 and they sort of like
Hmm.
write their own scores for the rest of the movies and they throw that in every once in a while in some like version, but there's never a point where it's like ever really realized. And I think that that's the
Sure.
challenge is it's like, do you take what was done before and do you elevate it? Because like what Giacchino
Hmm.
did with Star Trek 2009, that was to me that was
Oh
elevating it
yeah.
because
Yeah.
he had his own bum bum ba ba la bum bum ba ba la, and then he just throws in the ba da 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 da
He
da.
wrote it in such a way
It
that you could
fit.
seamlessly go from his theme into the classic Star Trek theme, and it feels like they were written as one piece. The
Yes.
way that that movie plays out, yeah, that was
So
ingenious.
to me,
Uh,
that's what you do. Like he set that bar
yeah,
already. So when you have a new movie, do that. Like take the old theme and be like, this is mine now.
right.
And I make my own extension to it that fits together. But for whatever reasons, he didn't do that with this movie. Maybe he wasn't
Right.
allowed to. But that was kind of what I was expecting from him at this point. Like we're so far past Incredibles that I don't hold
Mhm.
that, as his style anymore. And like especially
No.
with like what he's done with Spider-Man and things like that. Like he
Mhm.
made his own score out of that, but he also kind of gave it
Sure.
some nuance and there's the sort of like introspective, there's the kind of like, hey, we're going into goofy
Mhm.
Parker mode, there's things like that. But I didn't feel like the Fantastic Four, it was kind of more of that like emotional background than it was really like
Yeah,
what fanfare in your face. And I kind of wondered if that was his
it
choice or if that was the studio
wasn't
choice.
it. So having seen it more than once, it starts to stand out more for me on rewatch than it did the first time I watched it. It certainly elevates the movie more than the Superman score did.
Hmm.
So you got James Gunn, right? He is incredible at taking a pop or a rock song and plopping it down into a scene and having it fit perfectly. And he does that, I think,
Yeah.
twice in Superman. And it's like, it's great. It's like the
Hmm.
best thing ever. He just nails it with those. But then the score seemed like it was kind of an afterthought. At least with this movie, if I'm going to compare the two, it felt like the score was crafted to be something
Well,
that can
there
exist
is
on
a
its own,
score.
and it doesn't need, yeah, it doesn't need like additional things to kind of elevate it. It can kind
Yeah.
of stand on its own. I noticed it more in the sections with the surfer, particularly when they were doing the flashbacks with her, and then also the big sort of bombastic stuff when Galactus is destroying the planet. There is a choir singing something there.
Hmm.
Knowing Giacchino, it's probably something related to the story because he's the one that for Star Trek Into Darkness had a whole Klingon chase scene where there are
Yeah.
people singing in
That
Klingon
was
during the
awesome.
whole scene.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling. Also, the vocal song at the end, "Let Us Be Devoured," was
Hmm.
written by Giacchino and the artist that performed it for this movie. And it's basically from the perspective of somebody that's like, I hate it here on Earth. You should come and eat us. And so it was
Yeah.
kind of a funny thing to like plop at the end of the movie.
That's
But
the thing is like when they use pop music that way, it really enhances it. But there's so many
yeah.
directors that copy that and they just throw in like
Hmm.
random pop songs that's like, do we need this? Like there's a lot of shows that I
Right.
actually will hit mute during a lot of scenes because they're
Oh,
showing you
yeah.
something like emotionally heartbreaking and they're playing some random pop song and it's like, okay, come on, do we really have to do this? Like, so it's nice that,
CW's got to sell those CDs, man.
oh man. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed the score. I will say that neither Superman nor Fantastic Four quite reach the heights orally that I would like them to, but I'm happy enough with the Fantastic Four score. Will I probably go back to John Ottman's to listen to instead? Probably, just because I liked his fanfare for them. The ba 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 ba
yeah.
ba. That just, I don't know. It seemed to fit really well. So
Yeah, I don't
um
know if he must. I'm guessing he didn't borrow it because he wasn't allowed to. That's what my vote is going to
yeah,
be. Because just with
probably.
what he did before, I find it surprising that, and especially with that Fantastic Four, that part,
Yeah.
it's kind of like
Oh,
similar but different. So it was kind of like he was
sure.
copying it, but he was trying to do it on the down low so the execs wouldn't
Hmm.
notice. Is my guess. I could be completely wrong, but
It may have been it could have been a studio note, or it could have been a note from Matt Shackman, even going, "This is the direction I want the score for my
yeah.
movie to go." So because directors, I think, have a say in that as
Yeah,
well.
that's cool,
But
but tone it down and take out all of the counterpoint and all the choir, and then it'll be
right.
perfect for this scene. And the composer's like visibly crying, like, I
But
spent hours
that's
on the
what
cool
I
parts.
wrote.
Yeah. And then some,
Oh,
fanboy watches the movie and they're like, well, this, music was very emotionally sparse and very surface level and not very good. And the composer's like, I tried, man, I tried. But the director said, "Pfft."
yeah.
Anyway.
It's just funny. Again, I know I keep doing the comparison, but it is really fascinating to look at the way music is used in both of these movies this summer and how
Hmm.
it is kind of completely opposite. And it's just when Gunn does like that pin drop of the piece that's perfect for that scene, it's so
It works.
satisfying. It
Yeah.
really is. And the moments that hit emotionally in that movie, especially like the very end, are because he found a song that just like perfectly encapsulated what was going on with the character and
Hmm.
what they wanted to say. And you know and then but there's a moment where he's with Pa Kent in that movie where it should have been something that like stirred me a little bit, and what they were saying was really good, and it was I was like, oh wow, this is a great portrayal of the Superman character. But I felt like if the score had pushed a little further, it could have gotten a bigger emotional reaction out of me. And I was sort of aware of it in the moment where I was like, the acting is there and like the dialogue is there, but the score isn't pushing me over the edge the way that it could be. So again, maybe that's something that we pay attention to this.
Right.
I know a lot of people don't pay that much attention to it, but it's one of the things that we're passionate about.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we have a comic book podcast and they don't.
That's right. That's right.
And with that, let's move into final thoughts before we get in trouble.
All right.
Fantastic. Final thoughts. Final thoughts.
Should I get to stretch my eyeballs like Reed? Really, then it would really be 3D.
I'm glad that I cannot do that because I'm glad that I don't have to see you do that. Oh man, when he was like stretching Reed out and his clothes were ripping, Galactus is just like, and Reed's like,
he's like, this is fascinating. Yeah,
that was so much better than Doom feeding liquid nitrogen to Reed in the.
It was.
Yeah. It was like funny, but it was also like scary and painful and awful at the same time. And
at the same time, you're like, I'm worried for him. Like, what is he gonna do?
That was great. All right.
Well, you should go first. I know what I'm gonna say.
Oh, so. I was gonna say you should go first because you're probably
okay, well,
I want to say how great this was.
Well, I mean, if you can't tell from our discussion already, I mean, I really think this is a great movie. This is the happiest I've been leaving the theater, well, since Superman, but before that, it's the happiest I've been leaving a superhero movie in probably years, I would say. As far as just feeling like this treated me as a fan, like, Marvel actually cares about me. Like they care about the stuff that I've been reading and they put the work in to put it up on the screen. And that is like such a satisfying feeling because for years with the Fantastic Four, I feel like I've always been fighting that attitude of people going, oh yeah, like they're kind of lame or they're those characters with the rock guy that, he's always sad because he's ugly and the woman, can she do anything? She can just turn invisible. Like that's a lame power. And sort of the Gen Pop impression of them and even the comic book fans impression of them from people that haven't read a lot of their history is usually kind of like they peaked in the 60s and we're kind of over it now. So it was so nice to watch something modern that felt like it honored their history, but it also made some good story choices like making Shallabal be the Silver Surfer instead of Norrinrad that for this movie worked really well. And I mean, this was really kind of a best case scenario for me. Like I went in obviously wanting to like it and I was disappointed twice before. I did not see the 2015 movie because I don't want to. But
you can't make me.
But this just made me so happy to like finally see my favorite characters up on the screen. So it's got to be a 5 out of 5 for me. I mean, from all the emotional beats with the characters to the creative ways they use their powers to the way they reference their history, it just hit all the right notes for me. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I like it was really cool to see them actually do something with the FF and make it, like you said, pay homage to the comics, but also kind of do something a little bit different with it. But the thing that really, I think, worked overall is the framing device of this is Earth 828. So regardless of if this is the Fantastic Four, the version of them that you prefer, or you like something a little bit different, or you didn't like a certain portrayal or whatever, this is Earth 828. So there could conceivably be other Earths or other whatever out there with the version that you prefer. So now we're kind of saying that like this is a version of instead of this is the definitive version of, which I thought was really cool because now they can do what they want to do. They can have Johnny be a linguist who can speak alien languages. They can do that because this is something different. But they didn't change it enough that it was like, well, suddenly Johnny's a rocket scientist on top of it. He still had the hots for a woman who I don't know if you would say she was scantily clad or not, because technically she was covered
So
in cosmic silver.
yeah, it was funny because he's like, I met this naked alien chick, and Reed's like, well, she's probably not naked. It's probably some sort of polymer covering her
Polymer, that's what it
skin.
was.
And yeah,
But it was fun because we joked about that, but that didn't become his character. He wasn't just like
right.
drooling the whole time. So I felt it was like some emotionally intelligent, good storytellers got
Yeah.
together, decided to make a movie, and it's about freaking time because this is especially one that was like, if you guys ruin this movie, it's over for the FF. Like, I won't watch
Yeah.
another movie. Like, this is it. Three strikes and you're out. And they finally did it. So
Yeah.
for better or worse,
It's a
whatever
lot of
nitpicks
pressure.
that we pulled out of the movie, or some things that you're like, I didn't like that as much. I overall, I mean, just above and beyond, how they have been portrayed in the past, but also like it's funny because it's like they're on their own island and they're kind of doing this separate thing, and they're sort of starting a new trend for themselves, the Fantastic Four, but they're also doing the same thing. It's almost like a meta commentary of like they're doing the same thing in the real world with superhero movies. So it's
Yeah,
like,
they are.
and that's what they did when they were a comic book, is when
That's so true.
so it's
Oh
like
my gosh.
it's
I
like
didn't
perfect
realize
because
that.
they did that when the comic first came out, and then they did that again with this movie. So it's like the two together is like a perfect, mirror of
Yeah.
that. So I I don't know if I want to give it a 5 out of 5 of like this is my favorite movie of all time. I think I'll give it
Right.
a 4.5. So 4.5
Okay.
bananas out of 5,
Yeah.
which is still an
Yeah.
amazing score, still an average of 4.75. I mean, there's nothing that I would not enjoy about this movie again.
Sure.
I'd be curious to know
hmm
more about it, some of the behind the scenes and how they did
hmm
some of the like with the music that we talk about and the compositing and the CGI and things like that. It'd be interesting to kind of see, what they did and why it kind of looked the way that it did. But it didn't ruin the movie. It didn't take me out of it.
No.
The thing wasn't bad all the time where it was like, that looks like a rubber guy, running around the streets all the
No.
time. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So
It
yeah.
was, yeah, whereas Chickless's outfit did kind of look like a guy wearing rubber for
Mm,
the whole movie,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Well, and he wasn't like a
Um,
big CGI Hulk where it's like,
right.
either. So
Yeah, they kept
we
him
got
at
a
like
good
a
balance.
reasonable size where he was close, he was bigger than everybody else,
Yeah.
but you could see how they could almost look at him at eye level too,
And he also
so
had
he
a
wasn't.
very big unibrow,
He did.
which it
Yes.
isn't there like there's probably a specific artist who drew him that way, because I feel like I've seen him look that way
Well,
before in the comics, but
Kirby drew him that way.
oh, Kirby
I
did?
mean,
Okay. So that
Kirby
was the
drew him that
original
way.
then.
Everybody else kind of. So Kirby drew him oddly enough. He looked a little bit mushier when he first, like he hadn't solidified almost when he first changed in the early issues. And by
It's
the
more like
time we were
gravel.
about a year, yeah, but well, more like giant boulder for the chest, like one,
Ah,
but
okay.
like that. And the sort of like paneling and stuff came in later. Sort of
Hmm.
a similar process with the Hulk where he was gray and then they decided, well, no, that was a printing error. We were supposed to make him green.
Yeah.
And they go through the process of finding how do we want to draw this character. But yeah, that like unibrow is sort of part of his
Okay.
iconic look, honestly.
Nice.
So
All
yeah.
right. Well, that's going to
Yep.
wrap up this special bonus episode of We Like Comics
That's right.
Because They Have No Bones. Make sure you head on over to our YouTube channel, which you are probably there right now. If you're not, you should go there. It's called at Boneless Comics Podcast, where you can watch the video version of this episode, like it, subscribe to us. You can watch our other episodes, after shows, bonus content, and we will continue with our regularly scheduled programming after this with Star Wars Jango Fett in our next episode. But we were so excited about the FF that we had to insert this special bonus episode. So there you go. You're welcome.
That's right. Hopefully everybody enjoys it.
Yeah.
So as always, be sure to share your thoughts on social media at Boneless Comics Podcast or on Blue Sky Social or X at Boneless Comics 1. Use the hashtag Boneless Comics
Hashtag.
Podcast to let us know. Hashtag. I can't do that with my hands.
I need more arms.
To let us know what you thought of the movie Fantastic Four First Steps. but please be mindful of spoilers when you post online.
Yes, just because we have honestly, a spoiler review.
I was going to say, if it's in our comment section, then if you watch the video, we spoiled the whole movie anyway. So I don't know. If you have something to say about this.
Yeah. Watching a movie, I think, is different than posting text, because text can be read, whereas a video can be skipped. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
I would just be careful with spoilers, because somebody who stumbles upon our video and doesn't realize it's spoiler filled might see your spoiler in the comments before they realize that it's a spoiler review. So
yeah, that's true.
Just watch out for that, because it ruins the immersion of the movie. Like and like I said before, that's why I don't watch trailers. Partly because the way the trailers are put together, it's by a different team who doesn't really understand the movie, and they'll reuse either stock footage or music, or they'll just reuse the heck out of the main theme to like really drill it home, and it's not a good representation, or it just flat out spoils like the big twist. So stay away from trailers, stay away from spoilers, be kind to each other. Use this time that we have to be with those that we love before Galactus comes and they teleport him away to some far off place that we not know where, and hopefully he'll never come back. So thank you for listening and watching, and we'll catch you later.
We'll catch you later.
We like comics because